finally, President Biden is projected to win the Democratic primary. He will claim the state's 36 pledges to delegates in his bid to reclaim his party's nomination. This comes after the president visited the Valley this past weekend, focusing heavily on the general election in his speech in the historic West Side. He also met with members of the Culinary Union before leaving yesterday.